TIF financing for dummies for me. I mean, I've gone through this with you many times, but for the purpose of the record,
sure, I understand. Tax increment financing is something that communities, local governments across Ohio, under various sections of the Ohio Revised Code, are permitted to undertake. And in essence, what you have done is you have passed legislation identifying a number of parcels in the city along Interstate 70 and around there. That legislation has frozen the pre-improvement value of those parcels at the point that you enacted the legislation in 2003. Improvements to those properties that subsequently occur under ordinary circumstances would, of course, raise their valuation for the purposes of property taxes. However, you have frozen the valuation for purposes of property tax collection on those particular parcels. And the improvements that have occurred or that will occur in the future on those parcels, the owner of the parcel, differently than tax abatement, where they don't pay any taxes on the improvements. In the case of tax increment financing, the owners of the property make payments to the city in lieu of taxes. And those dollars paid to you in lieu of taxes are available to you to use to finance, pay for and finance capital improvements that are beneficial to those properties and to the city. And so in this particular case, back in when we began the process in 2003, or excuse me, in 2002, of identifying how we would locally finance a share of improving the two interchanges on Interstate 70 at 201 and 202, we identified this large number of parcels that would benefit from that. And you have a certain amount of debt service responsibility that funds you have already borrowed as your share of those two interchange projects. And what you ask us to do, what we did, is identify how much more capacity from existing parcels that had been developed under the authority of that original TIF legislation, how much additional revenue would be generated beyond the amount needed for the two interchanges being financed. And we identified a revenue stream that's currently being collected for those parcels and available to you today and into the future under the terms of that legislation, in the roughly enough to finance about $6 million worth of capital improvements in a reasonable range of today's rates. So the idea is you capture the additional revenue that would ordinarily be that would be captured as property tax, only you collect it as payments in lieu of taxes. Those are real dollars available to you today that can't be used, for example, to pay for firemen and for police and other operating expenses of the city. They are available only to you for capital improvements for public infrastructure and other types of capital improvements that would be beneficial to those properties in the city.
Ron, just three points I just want to clarify and build on what you said. So, but basically that since it's an income stream over a period of time that's creating the $6 million, we will be going out and bonding this project. In fact, there's, I believe, legislation on the agenda for this evening.
That's correct.
That would authorize that. So we are actually, bonding it. And that income stream, again, these are improvements that are already in place, assessments that are already being collected, will then be used to pay those note payments when they come due.
That's also correct.
The other thing, too, is that I just wanted to make it clear that pursuant to an agreement that we have with the Huber Heights City Schools as part of our TIF financing, generally, not just this project, but for the whole thing, normally real estate taxes that are collected on the improvements go down to the county, and the county then uses them, and some of that money comes to the schools. Well, we've got an agreement in place where out of that money, the school's still going to get their share.
Yes.
So we're not shortchanging the schools in any way by this. I think that's important to note. And then the last part is that the parcels that we're basing the $6 million are already parcels that have been improved up to this point in time. Those aren't all, we still have a lot of parcels up there that are yet to be improved and within the TIF district, and as they are improved, that money will then be also added to the assessments that we're collecting So that $6 million, as more homes are built in carriage trails, as any commercial development happens up in that particular area, that number is only going to get larger.
Yeah, that's also correct.
Okay, those were points I just wanted to make for the record.
Thank you, Jim. And one extension on that, then I'll ask you, Jim. But fortunately, this council, and I was not sitting on it at the time, had the foresight to put this in a TIF area and so forth. One of the last residential TIFs in the state of Ohio, to my understanding, and that foresight and able to capture these sales tax dollars that might have otherwise went to the county, and enabling this to provide this for the residents. And that, I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead.
I might clarify one thing, Mr. Mayor. The residential improvement district TIF that you created in Miami County is not being planned to be used to retire any of the debt service for this improvement.
Right.
Can you use the TIF money that's collected in Montgomery County for a facility in Miami County?
That's a judgment that's both an engineering and a legal judgment. The improvements that are financed or paid for directly out of TIF dollars must be seen to be a benefit for the parcels that generate them, and of course then a benefit to the larger public. So under some circumstances, I think the answer to that is yes, it would be possible, but in most cases there's a physical proximity that counts and is important. In this case, this particular location is within easy reach of the 201 interchange, and clearly would be benefiting the parcels generating the bulk of the revenue.
And this development is strictly in Montgomery County?
That's correct.
Correct. And it's being provided to the citizens of Huber Heights at no additional tax dollars?
That's correct.
Okay, and for just one more small clarification, the money that we have been collecting has been going to pay off the bonds for 201 and 202.
That's correct.
So those are so far along being paid off that now we know that we can plan another project with future revenue stream that we know is going to be coming in?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
What we did is we took the parcels that were subject to the original tax increment financing legislation on the Montgomery County side of the Huber Corporation line, and projected the revenue out over the 30-year life of the TIF for each of those individual parcels, subtracted from that your debt service for the 201 and 202 interchange projects, and then created a net present value based on a range of assumptions in terms of that known existing revenue at today's tax rates. So, of course, if tax rates would climb at some point, that will generate more revenue, as Councilman Ellis said, as other properties within that are subject to the TIF legislation would be developed, that would generate additional revenue for you. But today, this conservative assumption is really based upon, we know you've got this much money, you're going to need to invest it in something that is a benefit to the city and that is related to the TIF. You've made a decision to move forward with the recreational complex, and we're helping to expedite that project for you.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councilman? Nope. Thank you, Steve.